finding ways to use analysis and be a good problem solver is important. DJ Fuller is co-founder of Flourish, an educational services company, and is part of the New World of Work team. He's going to help us understand what it means to be a good problem solver. He will be explaining the 4 traits of having an analysis and solution mindset. Considers different points of view, tries to understand why information is presented the way it is. Sees problems and needs in society, the community, or workplace. Looks at the bigger picture when finding a way to solve a problem. Sees themes or patterns in data, connects information from different subject areas, uses critical thinking skills, takes time to think about different ways of solving problems, tests out ideas to find the one that is best. James and Linnea will also join us to tell us about their experiences using their problem-solving abilities. And DJ, what is the first trait of an analysis and solution mindset?
Considering different points of view and trying to understand why information is presented in the way it is.
Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. Anytime you're getting information, it's going to come through a filter, a perspective of some sort. It might be a newspaper, it might be a person, but whatever it is, there's going to be a perspective through which that information is filtered. So in addition to just hearing the information, it's really helpful to understand the perspective through which that information is coming. That really helps you know where you are.
And James, do you have any experience where you had to dig a little bit deeper to better understand a perspective with the information you were being given?
Sure. There was one time when I was working at a theme park and I was going through training. And the coworker that was training me, she was very, free and very friendly. And amongst her being friendly and free, she was also getting her job done. So she would say things like, hey, how's your day going? What are your hobbies? And then in the midst of that, she'll be very hands-on with, okay, making sure that we're doing what we need to do in a timely manner.
Yeah, it's really neat that you understood the underlying objective, right? You could have just read it at the surface and said, hey, she's being friendly only to be friendly, when in fact she was being friendly in order to help you get the job done that much more efficiently. So it's really great that you understood what the underlying objective is there. Otherwise, there might have been an interesting miscommunication.
And James, what do you think would have happened if you kind of took it at face value and you weren't able to analyze and see all of the information you were being given?
Right. I feel like it would have been a disaster, to be honest. I feel like if I took it for what she, just paying attention to the friendliness part, I could have took it as, hey, let's have a good time at work. And I think seeing it through her lens that she was being friendly, but then also being very focused and doing her work diligently, it made it all make sense to me.
And so, James, what do you think your coworker's objective really was?
I think her objective was to definitely make sure that everything was a positive feel, positive vibe at work, and also learn at the same time. It makes me feel open to learning a different way.
Can you think of a time when information looked differently to you than it looked to someone else? Find a partner to exchange stories with. Then take a few minutes to discuss how each perspective informed the way that that person understood the situation and what their goals were. So DJ, what is the second trait of an analysis and solution mindset?
Seeing problems and needs in society, the community, or the workplace, and looking at the bigger picture when finding a way to solve a problem.
And how do you do that?
Well, when you're addressing a problem, I think the most important question you can ask yourself is, why does that problem exist? That takes you to the next level of analysis, and you can really get down to the root cause, right? So as an example, let's say that you have a person who needs to buy a new car. They don't have savings, so they need to work on building up their savings so that they can put the down payment on this car, yet month after month their savings don't grow, right? From an outside perspective, you could easily arrive at the conclusion that this person simply needs to be better at saving money. They're making some sort of mistake, right? But if you look at the full context, you might see, oh, well, this person has actually kind of a low-paying job. It might not be so easy for them to save money. So in panning out and getting a little bit of a broader perspective, asking yourself why, you really locate the origin of the problem.
So in order to get a new car, it's not enough to say, oh, I need more savings, but to actually see the real issue might be needing a higher paying job.
Exactly.
And Linnea, you did have an experience where you kind of had to look at the bigger picture in order to help see a problem at work more accurately, is that correct?
Yeah, I work at the diner, and it's a very busy diner with a lot of customers coming in every day. And we do a lot of stuff. Like, I'm a waitress and I'm doing the dishes at the same time as I'm cleaning the tables and putting everything back to where it's supposed to be. So there's a lot of things to do at the same time. And I'm started to feel very stressed for a while, and I saw that the people around me who's working there also are very stressed. But I didn't see anyone really bringing it up or talking about it. Everyone just kind of went with it. But I started to feel like it was a problem because we barely had our lunch breaks. Everyone was super stressed. And I thought that, well, maybe our problem is that we don't have enough people working there. But then again, I started to step back a little and think that maybe the problem is that we lack communication because nobody talks about it. And so I brought it up with my boss, and we talked about it, and she didn't know. She knew, like, we were busy, but she didn't know that we were so stressed out. And I feel like sometimes you expect people to just know when they actually don't. So I felt like the bigger problem here was a lack of communication since she didn't know. And when she found out, she could start working towards a better work environment.
Yeah, I have to say that's really insightful in a couple of respects. You know, when you're in a new work environment, you do sort of expect people to be all on the same page and communicating,
exactly,
right? And yet you saw that they weren't. And then taking the additional step of thinking to yourself, well, maybe my boss actually doesn't know exactly what's going on. Maybe there's a lack of communication both at my level and this level. And I have to say, as a manager for many years myself, I've run into that over and over and over again. People just assume that you know everything.
Yeah.
So you demonstrated empathy for your coworkers and a broader perspective, a boss level perspective, which is really great.
So after you were able to identify there was a larger issue with communication, how did your boss react?
Well, she was really happy I told her, because since she didn't know, she couldn't do anything about it. But now when she knows and everything is out there, we can all start working towards a much better working environment, because we all sat down and talked about it, which does relieve stress, talking about it. So I think it's a much better place to work at now, for sure.
Well, it's really great that your observation, noticing that something was wrong, and then seeing the larger issue was able to create a better working environment, not just for you, but for all of your team members. Consider the question, why don't people recycle more? Or what factors keep people from having healthy food? Make a list of the larger issues that could be at play. Afterwards, share your ideas with the group and take some time to discuss how each of those issues could be addressed in a way that could result in an increase in recycling and healthier food options. DJ, what is the third trait of analysis and solution mindset?
Seeing themes or patterns in data, connecting information from different subject areas, and using critical thinking.
And what's an example of how that would work?
So take food packaging as an example. In the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, all of a sudden you see a very big change in the way food is packaged. It gets more colorful, it gets more interesting. You know, if you didn't make connections, then that might be a mystery. But if you take a look at other dynamics happening at that same time, you see that the way people shopped for groceries fundamentally changed. People used to go down the street to a local grocer and wait at the front of the store while the grocer picked up their food for them. So there was no particular need for fancy packaging. The grocer already knew where the food was. In the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, you started to see supermarkets show up, and that was people's first real opportunity to walk through the aisles and see the food for the first time. So food manufacturers had a pretty clear incentive to make the food look as attractive as humanly possible. All of a sudden you see that there are colorful boxes, there are cartoon characters on cereal boxes, that kids' cereal is down where the kids can actually reach it, so on and so forth. So that's a really good example of taking two different data sets and making a connection between them to locate the actual cause for a phenomenon.
So two pieces of information that seem to be completely disconnected can actually be informing one another?
Absolutely.
And Linnea, do you have any experience with this?
Yeah, the diner that I'm working at is located by a campus, and there's also a lot of other restaurants located by the campus. And we expected a lot of students to come during lunch, but we didn't have a lot of students coming during lunch, and we started to wondering why and how that could be. So we sat down and started looking at our menu, because we knew the other restaurants' menus, they were pretty cheap and everything, but ours were pretty expensive, and we started thinking that maybe there's some connections between those two things, and we actually decided to change our lunch menu, and we changed it to a much cheaper price, also healthier food, almost like a home-cooked meal kind of thing. So we got a lot of more students coming in during lunch after that, and it's kind of like a win-win, because the cafe got more students, and the students got cheaper, healthier food.
Yeah, that's a really great example of making connections. The cafe was probably there for quite some time and was used to getting a certain amount of business the old way, right? But you came along and you started to make connections. You could have perceived the dip in clientele as merely a matter of bad luck or temporary or something like that, but you actively looked into your context and saw, oh wait, things have changed. Prices are now lower. We have competition. And that gave you an opportunity to find a solution. Really great insight.
Can you think of a time you've been able to make a connection like Linnea made? It should be a situation where you were able to see the relationship between two different sets of information. Now partner up and exchange stories. DJ, what is the fourth trait of an analysis and solution mindset?
Taking time to think about different ways of solving problems, and then testing out ideas to find the one that is best.
So it's okay to test out an idea even if you're not 100% sure it's going to work?
Absolutely. In reality, you're very rarely going to find yourself in a situation where you know 100% that one thing is going to work. So you're going to have to try things anyway. The point really isn't to just try anything. You certainly don't want to try things that you know will fail. The point is to do a little bit of research, try things that you have a reasonable expectation, of success, and then testing them out to find which one works best.
And James, have you ever had an experience where in order to solve a problem you had to try a variety of solutions?
I did. It was this one time when I was working at a theme park and we were doing a prep line at a restaurant. And so the prep line was moving, but however, the customers were not moving in and out quickly. So I came up with one way to maybe help the line move quicker was to maybe prep 30 minutes before we open. Maybe that'll help it run quicker. That didn't work. The second thing I came up with was maybe if I just jump in and help another person add it in, that might make it move quicker. That didn't work either. So then from there I said, you know what? Maybe if the before prep person switches with the after prep, maybe that'll help things move quicker. And sure enough, when we made the switch, everything flowed so much faster. It was crazy, unbelievable.
That's really great that you were able to take the time to kind of come up with all of those different ideas for a solution. Now, if you weren't able to find that solution for the first two times, were there any negative repercussions?
Oh, yes. The first 2 times trying those 2 ways made the customers grow very impatient, very angry, you know, on top of getting their food. So they're not really enjoying their time, and which is money spent being at a theme park nowadays. You know, you want to have a good time when you're doing that.
Yeah, you know, anytime you confront a problem and your first solution doesn't work, you know, it feels bad, right? You feel some frustrations, but they're temporary, right? Because the first solution that you tried pointed you to another solution, then ultimately to the correct one. So you did a really great job of powering through that frustration until you got the problem solved.
Thank you.
The other really interesting thing too is you identified the particular skill sets of the people that you were working with, and you realized, hey, wait a minute, if I just switch them around, all of a sudden I don't even need to add people and I have a more efficient operation, and that really demonstrates keen insight.
Thank you.
Divide yourselves into groups of 3 or 4. Then work together to pick out a problem that is facing your school or community. After that, brainstorm potential solutions. When you have at least 5 possible tactics, work together to pick the 3 possibilities that are most likely to be effective. If you have time, do the same thing with another problem.